This is the story of three men who, in a single calendar year, ignited the most explosive chart war in the history of country music. And it is the story of the one who eclipsed them all, without anyone seeing it coming. In 1989, country music was at a crossroads. Clint Black, Garth Brooks, and Alan Jackson released their first singles into a Nashville recording industry that had just survived its worst commercial drought in 2 decades, a drought that had its roots in the urban cowboy boom of 1980, when the 1980 John Travolta film briefly turned country into a pop crossover novelty and left the format overextended and commercially exhausted when the fad collapsed. It had taken artists like Randy Travis, whose 1986 debut Storms of Life on Warner Brothers Nashville launched the neo-traditionalist revival that rebuilt country's core audience, nearly 3 full years to restore the genre's credibility. By the end of 1991, one of those 3 new artists would become the best-selling solo artist in American history. Another would set a country chart record that nobody had ever set before, and that nobody has equaled since. And the third, the one nobody was watching, would outlast them both. This is how the race for the top of the country chart actually unfolded, single by single, week by week. The first shot belonged to Clint Black. He had been signed to RCA Records Nashville in October of 1987, at a moment when RCA was the most aggressive country label in the city. His debut single, A Better Man, released in early 1989, did something no country artist had done in 14 years. It became the first debut single by a male country artist to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart since 1975. Critics could not get enough. Black, a black-hatted Texan with a clean baritone and a writing partner named Hayden Nicholas, had co-written every track on his debut album, Killin' Time. He had defied Nashville convention by recording the album with his own road band instead of the city's Music Row session musicians, a break from the polished, formulaic approach that producers like the late Owen Bradley had institutionalized as the Nashville sound a generation earlier. The album hit number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart, and it was certified platinum within a year. Nashville's industry press had a name for Black and the wave of similar artists beginning to crest behind him: H-Acts, a term that captured both their look and their unabashedly traditional country identity. By every visible metric, he was the future of country music. 4,500 miles southwest, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, a former Oklahoma State University javelin thrower named Garth Brooks was watching it happen. Brooks's own first attempt at Nashville had ended in 24 hours. He had driven into Music Row, gotten nowhere, and driven home defeated. By the time he returned in 1987, Capitol Records Nashville, at that point the smallest of the major Nashville labels, was the only one willing to sign him. His debut single, Much Too Young to Feel This Damn Old, peaked at number 8 on Billboard's country chart in the spring of 1989. Respectable. Forgettable. The Nashville press dismissed him. Black was the story. In Noonan, Georgia, a 30-year-old former mailroom clerk at the Nashville network named Alan Jackson was about to discover how brutal a wrong first single could be. His debut, Blue-Blooded Woman, released on the brand-new Arista Nashville label, failed to crack the country top 40. It stalled in the mid-40s. Jackson's career, before it had even properly begun, looked over. Spring belonged to Black. Brooks was an asterisk. Jackson was already in trouble. But here's the thing. Black didn't just win the spring, he won the entire year. His second single, the title track Killin' Time, went number 1. So did his third, Nobody's Home. So did his fourth, Walking Away. 4 singles, 4 chart toppers in a row. He won the Country Music Association Horizon Award in 1989 and the Academy of Country Music Top New Male Vocalist Trophy that same year. RCA had built a phenomenon. And that's when Garth Brooks released his second single. If Tomorrow Never Comes, co-written with Brooks's longtime collaborator Kent Blasey, climbed to number 1 on Billboard's country chart in December of 1989. It was a small dent. The press still framed Black as the genre's center of gravity. But behind the scenes, Capitol Nashville was watching something they hadn't expected. Brooks's debut album was selling faster than the chart position suggested, though at that point, nobody in Nashville had a precise way to measure it. The industry still ran on shipped units and gut instinct, not verified consumer purchases. Then came June of 1990. Brooks released The Dance, a slow, philosophical ballad written by Tony Arata about a love affair that ended badly but was still worth having. The single went to number 1. The accompanying music video, which interspersed footage of fallen American icons over the song's chorus, became one of the most played videos in the history of CMT and TNN. The Dance didn't just become a hit, it became a cultural artifact. Brooks was no longer an asterisk. In April of 1990, Alan Jackson, given a second chance by Arista Nashville president Tim DuBois, released Here in the Real World. The single climbed to number 3 on Billboard's country chart. His debut album of the same name, produced by Keith Stegall and Scott Hendricks, eventually went platinum. Jackson had survived the failure of Blue-Blooded Woman, and he'd quietly inserted himself back into the conversation. 3 men, 3 labels, 3 trajectories now climbing in parallel. The race was on. On August 27th of 1990, Capitol Records Nashville released Garth Brooks' second album, No Fences. The lead single was Friends in Low Places, written by Dwayne Blackwell and Earl Bud Lee. It went to number 1 on Billboard's country chart, and it stayed there for 4 consecutive weeks. The album it came from would spend 41 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart, a number unheard of in country music history. Capitol Nashville's president, Jimmy Bowen, a veteran producer who had taken over the office that year after dissolving his short-lived Universal Records imprint in December of 1989, would later admit he had to send a personal video message to the global distribution team at EMI. Nobody at corporate believed the numbers Garth was generating. Black, refusing to be eclipsed, released his second album, Put Yourself in My Shoes, in October of 1990. The title track went to number 4. The album went triple platinum. By any historical standard, it was a triumph. Against Garth Brooks' No Fences, it looked like a footnote. Jackson, undeterred, released Don't Rock the Jukebox in May of 1991. The title track, co-written with Roger Murrah and Keith Stegall, went to number 1 on Billboard Country Chart. So did 3 more singles from the album. Working with producer Keith Stegall, Jackson was now confirmed as a star. Around them, the field was filling. Travis Tritt, signed to Warner Brothers Records Nashville, had released his debut country club in 1990, and he followed it with It's All About to Change in May of 1991. Both went platinum. Mary Chapin Carpenter's State of the Heart, released on Columbia Records Nashville, had sold modestly. But her 1990 follow-up, Shooting Straight in the Dark, produced Down at the Twist and Shout, which won her a Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance. Vince Gill, finally free of his unproductive years at RCA, was riding the success of When I Call Your Name on MCA Nashville, produced by Tony Brown, the man who would shortly produce half the genre. The class of '89 was no longer 3 artists, it was an ecosystem. But everyone in the ecosystem was still chasing one man. This is the moment everything changed. On September 10th of 1991, Capitol Records Nashville released Garth Brooks' third album, Ropin the Wind. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, the all-genre album chart that measured every record sold in America that week, making it the first country album in the history of the Billboard 200 to ever debut at number 1. It also debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart simultaneously, and the timing was not coincidental. Just 5 months earlier, in March of 1991, Nielsen SoundScan had launched its point-of-sale tracking system, replacing the old shipped units estimates with actual scanned purchases for the first time. Nashville had been flying blind for decades. Now the instruments were on, and what they showed was Garth Brooks. Brooks had achieved something Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, George Jones, and every other titan of the genre, including George Strait, who had spent the previous decade quietly accumulating more number 1 singles than almost anyone alive, had never managed. He had broken the wall between country and pop on opening week. In early 1992, NBC aired This Is Garth Brooks, a primetime concert special. It became one of the 10 most watched programs in America that week. At the November 1991 CMA Awards, Brooks won Entertainer of the Year, Album of the Year for No Fences, Single of the Year for Friends in Low Places, and Video of the Year for The Thunder Rolls. At the 1992 ACM Awards, he won Entertainer of the Year, Top Male Vocalist, Album of the Year, Single of the Year, and Video of the Year. Black, still selling, still charting, watched the trophies move past him. He'd ended that stretch with 5 number ones from his debut album, Killin' Time, a country music first. No artist in the genre's history had pulled 5 chart-topping singles from a debut record. It was a record-setting achievement that, in any other year, would have made him the story of the decade. In 1991, it was a sidebar. This is what the class of '89 did to country music. Clint Black would go on to record more than 20 number one country singles across his career. He never repeated the velocity of his first 18 months. Garth Brooks would, by the mid-2020s, surpass 162 million certified album units in the United States, making him, by RIAA's count, the best-selling solo artist in American recording history. Alan Jackson, the man whose first single failed in the mid-40s, would tally 35 number one country hits across the next 3 decades, and he became the genre's elder statesman. The flood the 3 of them triggered was unprecedented. By August of 1991, Brooks and Dunn had arrived on Arista Nashville. Trisha Yearwood debuted on MCA Nashville that same summer. Billy Ray Cyrus broke through on Mercury Records Nashville in 1992. Tim McGraw arrived on Curb Records in 1993. Faith Hill debuted on Warner Brothers Nashville the same year. Shania Twain's The Woman in Me, produced by Robert John Mutt Lange, detonated in 1995. Leanne Rimes signed to Curb Records as a teenager in 1996. Deanna Carter's Strawberry Wine went to number 1 that same year. The Dixie Chicks broke nationally on Monument Records in 1998. The number of major country labels operating in Nashville rose from 8 in 1990 to 26 by 1996. The class of '89 did not just win the race for number 1. They built the stadium every country artist after them would compete in. Black got there first. Brooks won the decade. Jackson outlasted them both. And the year that produced all 3 of them, 1989, became the year modern country music actually began.